Today we're talking about retention or turnover. So if you've tuned in today and you're looking at data from your work, your business, your boss, your company, and you're seeing numbers on turnover and you're struggling to even find the people that you need to do the work that your organization does, today is going to be for you. I'm going to break it up in a few different ways just to make it useful to you, to give you some utility around this. And anything you hear today, like, I want to learn more about that, just reach out and we can talk about it. So when we're thinking about retention, how do I retain people? How do I keep people here? Like, we'll talk about hiring in a moment. I think that comes next. I want you to think of essentially four things. How do we better retain people? I want you to think of teams, leaders, culture, and then jobs. Teams, leaders, culture, and jobs. I'm going to break all those down in just a second. Before we get to any of those, well, how do I know where to start? What do I do? We start with data. So what do I mean by that? So over here, you have business results or life results or whatever you're looking at with your organization. Like, here's the result that we're getting. It can be a number of something, a quality metrics. It could be money. It's probably money. You run a business. There's things happening over here that have to happen. Like, these are the ultimate metrics, whether we're profitable or not profitable. Then you go over here to business strategy or strategy. How are we going to organize ourselves, organize resources, money, capital, buildings, brick and mortar, technology, et cetera, to accomplish these results? And depending upon what your business is, that can be different. Okay. So we have our business result over here. Hang on to that. And there's data there. There's numbers. They're on spreadsheets and QuickBooks, whatever financial software, they're all there. Over here is business strategy. And these have a home in different places. Like, this is how we are going to accomplish it. And there's data over here. This is sometimes where turnover data can show up, retaining people, because teams is part of this. What lives and drives that business strategy? Well, it's teams, leaders, cultures, and jobs as it relates to the big chunk in the middle, which is people. Usually one of your largest expenses or investments, depending upon how you look at it, is your people, your talent that drive your organization. Now that we have data, we're thinking about what kind of data can I get from this? So we're getting in the middle now. How do I get data on teams, leaders, and culture and jobs? I have data on my business strategy, maybe. I have data on my results. I mean, that's real. Like, that stuff I have to deliver and show it's tangible. To get data on, let's talk about culture for a second. You could do an employee experience survey, employee engagement survey, something like that. They're all over the place. There's all different kinds that you can use. What kind of data will that give you? It'll give you data on all of these categories or most of these categories. There's even industry-specific versions of that if that's something of interest to you. So it gives you some sense of, like, what are our people experiencing when they're here in these areas? And there's something usually in there about, like, manager leadership. There's something in there about my coworkers, the culture at large, the overarching, like, the executive level leadership of the organization, the purpose of the organization. So that's a good way to extract that data from the people that already work at your organization, whether you have 50 people or 150,000 people. And once we have some of that data, and there's other forms of data. You can get data on jobs using different types of assessments to try to extract out what's working there, what's not working in jobs. Leaders, there are a variety of ways. At Advisa, we have a teams, leaders, and cultures assessment, and that's something that we use to kind of dial in tight around the areas where we consult. But think about a 360 feedback tool for leaders. That's individual. It's not supposed to be broadcast, but that's a way to get feedback directly if I happen to be a leader. What are people experiencing with me? You can do that with emotional intelligence as well. A 360 with emotional intelligence piece. There's pieces there. And then the same thing can flow down with teams. I mean, there's a variety of surveying tools. What's an effective team? What's a team that retains versus a team that doesn't retain people? What do we learn? So we need to start with, back to the point here, is data. And maybe even getting ahead of myself, what does that data support? What does a business result support or a business strategy support? The overarching purpose of your organization. Why do you exist? Why does it exist? Sometimes that's well articulated in vision, mission. And then if it's not, I'd say revise those. And then those are fueled by, how do we behave on our journey, on the mission to accomplish this vision, is your core values, your core principles, guiding principles. They're called a variety of things, and we'll go back to those in just a moment. Those are super important for your culture. So we start with data, what's going on here outside of just our business strategy and results. Let's dive into each one as it relates to retention. I want to start with something that has almost the highest impact on retention, which is my relationship. And think about relationship in each one of these categories. Relationship with job, or my individual relationship with my work. Your organization is made up of a number of people. Each one is hired into a job. Or if you're an earlier stage startup or mid-level startup, or kind of transitioning over, you might have multiple jobs. But that's why I'm here, to fulfill this purpose for the organization. My relationship with my job is the most primary to me experiencing it being engaged, me being driven, motivated, feeling significant in my role, doing things that are giving me energy because I can see them driving toward that purpose. So when we have a full understanding of what a job is, then we can connect it to people. Where do we sometimes go wrong? Well, maybe the job descriptions haven't been brushed up in 10 years, or maybe they don't even exist. Maybe the job descriptions don't have specifics as to how do I actually behave to get this sales number? What do I actually have to do all day long to produce this number of this or this result? They just fail to be useful, ongoing to the individual doing the job, the employee. So we can bolster the jobs there. Then you have data around the job specifically, which is who over time succeeds in that job and who over time does not succeed. They turn over and their results just aren't there. Can we extract data there to get a better sense as to what is that job and what type of behaviors are necessary within that job? So jobs is a big one. So when you really think about your engagement scores, your results as it relates to turnover and retention, I'd say one of the best places to get data is in jobs. Are we turning over one job over another? Are there some people in that job that stay? There's a ton to learn from this. After we leave jobs, we can actually look at, I like to go right to leaders. Because outside of jobs, one of the other strongest reasons someone leaves a job or stays in a job is their leader, which could be called a manager, supervisor, director, whoever the boss is or your boss is. That would be who I'd be defining as leader. And that goes all the way up through the organization. You get to the highest level, we start to talk about more cultural aspects, which we'll get to in a second. So when you're thinking, wow, I've low turnover, or I have a high turnover here and we're not retaining people. Well, the leader is basically the culture carrier. They're the ones who carry down that to get the business results, the business strategy, and the culture and the purpose down to that team, whether that team's in engineering, in design, it's a nursing floor in a hospital, it's the commercial loans department in a bank. That individual leader, that's how I view the entire organization. That's the lens that I view the entire organization if I'm an employee. Strong leaders, well, what would make a strong leader? They tend to be self-aware. They tend to be able to self-manage, to engage other people, and then they get results. The fabric between self-awareness and self-management, if you're thinking about this, and self-management and engaging other people, essentially that's where emotional intelligence is nested. Do I have a pause when I'm interacting with people to consider their situation, consider that employee's life, how they're experiencing the organization, how they're experiencing their teammates, our clients, customers, internal or external? Am I looking at that? Am I making that a priority in my day and week if I'm a leader to consider that for my people? How might that not happen? Well, let's say I'm a leader that has 36 direct reports. Okay, that's pretty unruly. Is there a pretty good chance that one of those people is not getting enough time, attention, energy, feelings of significance, coaching in their role, resources under a 1 to 36 model? I'd say yes. Okay. And if you think about like universities and things like that, what do they brag about? Teacher to student ratio. We have it's a teacher to student, one teacher to every 6 students or one teacher to every 10 students. You can find it everywhere. It's kind of like tribal rules. So what's the rule to operate off of? Typically we see like 1 to 10 or 1 to 8 is manageable as it relates to a week of work for supervisors. But going back to the leaders, if I have that aspect of self-awareness, I have a healthy amount of emotional intelligence, what might need to be there? Well, there's competence, knowledge, like do they know how to do the job? Have they been in the industry? Can they be a resource for me, a level of a subject matter expert for me to defer to? Do they have the appropriate amount of authority or power to influence our group, team, division, etc.? That can be frustrating for leaders. They get tasked with something and then they do not have the power, the budget, the resources within the bureaucracy or the organization to get the result. They're stuck begging or having to influence from the side to get things to happen. That can be a very frustrating situation for leaders. And what could tend to happen on engagement surveying is I'm as hand-tied as the people that work for me. Yeah, so I go to my team and, wow, yeah, it's nothing I could really do about it. This is what they're telling me. So the manager score might be high. The leader might get a 90% from the team, but still technically be failing as it relates to accomplishing the business strategy and getting the results. Well, they really like the manager. It's probably not it, but you've hand-tied the manager because they just don't have what they need to accommodate that team to get the result they want. Again, this is on paper. So those are some of the aspects of leaders, and leadership in a certain sense is a job that people are typically not very well prepared for. When you come into an organization, you're typically onboarded. You're onboarded into the culture, the company, how it works, and then you're onboarded and trained into a specific job, and then there's on-the-job training. Oftentimes, that's it. And leadership training is on the side, on your own. It kind of happens or it doesn't happen with kind of soft mentoring or loose mentoring. But there tends to lack in most organizations a formal leadership development process at key levels of in their employee base. So you can have emerging leaders, younger leaders that we're grooming to move up to that next level. You can have frontline supervisor training or leadership training there. You can have senior director level leadership training. And then you can have summits and something to continue to have that C-suite to develop to lead that organization. So when you're thinking about the leaders aspect of retention, we talked about jobs. Now we're talking about leaders. Those are the ways that we tend to look at it, or I tend to look at it with my clients. How are we evaluating what's happening there? And then what tools are we giving leaders in terms of development, coaching, investment to ensure that that's shored up if we find that might be one of the reasons we don't have the type of retention that we want. Next, let's go to teams. So we have teams, leaders, culture, and jobs. We've covered leaders and jobs. Teams. So if you move back down from leader or manager, the next thing is my coworkers. All right. Has anyone worked in a job where it's like, man, like a couple of these people are just, man, seeing them drains me, or they're not capable of doing their work, or they're not trustworthy, or they don't communicate. I have to do all the work, or it's a stretch for me. I have to go all the way across the bridge. These are annoyances and sometimes job threatening in a lot of cases on many teams and many organizations around the world. So when you look at team, what do we want to see there? You want to see a team where, first of all, people each fit their job. They're competent and capable to operate in their job. The jobs are reasonable. There's a setup for trust and credibility within the team. We communicate and we know where someone's competent, where they might not, that might not be their job or part of their role. We have defined roles and how we operate. And then there is communication. There's methods. You can use software, technology, Teams, Slack, all of these different resources to facilitate communication. But then what are the rules? Where is there accountability for communication? You can have all the cool, neatest software in the whole world. If there's no data input, my people don't use it, or it's an additional pain in the rear end to use, odds are good that there's not going to be adherence. So the communication is just as bad, but you have all this fancy software now. Congratulations. There's an app for that no one wants to use. But on those teams, if we're facilitating relationship, chemistry, it means it's a priority for that leader, which means we're spending time together, sometimes to have fun, sometimes to talk about life or things outside of work, sometimes to talk about purpose, our connection to purpose. There are these things that don't find a hard and fast rule into business results or even that hardcore business strategy, but they are super important. Think about that connection between my team. That's built with some level of leisure time together, talking, interacting. So here's where you can have the conversation about all remote teams. How do we keep them connected? Do we get them together? Or how far away do they work? Do we get them together annually, biannually, quarterly? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. What about, should we have a physical location that people come to, or should we not? Or should we do like a hybrid model? I mean, really, there's no hard and fast rule as to which one of those can have great teams. They all can. It just depends. You as a leader, and you can go to the culture of the organization, what's the framework? Where is it flexible? And then when you're getting data first, what is your team telling you? What's working? What's not working? Or if you're a leader higher up and you can look at multiple teams or regions, who is succeeding in this area of retention? Is it this leader over here? Is it that leader over here? You have data at your fingertips right now as to what's working and what's not working. Just have to extract it, and again, invest the time and to be still with it and say, hey, what is this breathing in to the organization? What is this telling me in terms of action as it relates to teams? So that's how we can look at teams. So you're really kind of combining jobs. Is everyone fit for their job? Is there trust? Is there proactive communication? And is there connection and chemistry within those teams to accomplish the goal? What are some common dysfunctions that you see within a team? You can see the antithesis of some of the things I said. People ill-equipped for their jobs, jobs that are not clearly defined. Roles are not clearly defined, so there's people stepping on each other on their turf. There's trust issues. Sometimes that trust, oftentimes it comes down to communication trust. What's communicated when? What volume of communication? What's shared? Those are some big ones. What else on teams? And then relationships. Yep, connection. Like, I just generally like or don't like the people I work with, maybe because I don't have a chance to even know them or learn them. So that's teams. We'll leave teams there. So we covered teams, leaders, and jobs. Now I want to cap this with culture. So what is culture? Culture is how all of your employees experience the organization. Like, how would I define this when I'm talking about it here? Like, that's kind of the culture. And in sports teams, if you're a sports fan, you can see this. Or if you're a big fan of a certain brand, you can sense when you look at their website, talk to their people, there's a certain way that they operate. There's a certain vibe of that place. And a lot of the cultural elements, if they're well written, you'll find in essentially the vision, mission, and then the guiding principles of an organization. And think about your favorite organization, your favorite business. It probably won't take you too long to talk about, hey, what are these people about? And how are they about accomplishing it? And that's how we kind of sort for culture. People are like, oh, we'll do a culture interview, things of that nature. Well, if you're an individual employee, you should be doing the same thing. How well does this align or not align with what I believe is important? How I want to work, how I want to communicate. How does this integrate with my lifestyle? There's a lot there as it relates to culture. And when you look at culture and you look at this data, this is where you start looking at things as a whole, and the microscope goes on that C level of your organization, the chief executive officer and their team, because they are the chief culture carriers. What do they behaviorally live out in the organization? That ends up becoming a form of culture. So if you think about it, hey, we're an example of the antithesis of a culture that will retain people. Is one that will push people away. Hey, we're free, work when you want. But then you have micromanaging managers all down chain. You have people always asking, like, where are they? What are they? They're not on Slack right now. I haven't seen their red light come on Teams. Like, where are they? What are they working on? Let's check on them. Let's have a meeting. All right. How free do you feel to do your job how you want to do it in that environment? So we're claiming one thing, but then our behavior says, yeah, we actually don't trust you to do your job the way you want to. Okay, that you're probably going to push away the people that would want to work in that culture to do the jobs that you want. Other aspects of a culture that could be negative, where it's like we claim one thing, but we don't resource anyone to do it. That's where you get culture. Oh, here's what we're about here in the interview. You get there, and then someone pulls you aside. Hey, let me tell you what's really going on here. Let me tell you how things really work here. That's where you have kind of like it's, you can think about like an iceberg model. We're out here, we're pushing this, and how great and how beautiful it is. But underwater, there's this like kind of subculture that really rules an organization. In my work with sales, you can find sales teams like this, where there's like one or two or three individual sales leaders that operate on a different set of rules and guidelines as everybody else. So what's the problem with that culture? Well, it's not fair. It's not fair. Like there's crimes being committed as it relates to how we're supposed to work, how we're supposed to administer things and do things. And then that becomes something that polarizes and pushes people away from an organization. So How do we address the culture if we realize there's organizational scores, culture scores, executive leadership scores that are lower? The first step, I think there's two things actually. Number one is vulnerability, authenticity. Like you can put those together: vulnerability, authenticity, and then communication with alignment. So we admit where we might be wrong. We talk about what's actually going on here. We have leaders that are vulnerable and share that, hey, we don't know everything. We're people too. And we want to meet and talk to you. That's that two-way communication. We're getting information in. Even an employee experience or engagement survey could be a function of proactively addressing culture challenges. I want to hear from you, but not just the survey. Then I'm going to talk about it. Then I'm going to think about it in the context of our purpose as an organization, our business strategy, and the results that we need to get to fulfill that purpose. And I'm going to do something with it. I'm going to communicate with you. Oh, you want to hear from leadership more? Here's how we're going to facilitate that. Oh, no one ever comes out to this kind of outpost in the southern part of wherever. We're going to find ways to better engage you with the rest of the organization. Just listen. I think most people, if you think, what's a great culture? People feel seen. They feel significant. I feel like it matters that I showed up here today to one of my teammates, to my leader, to the organization. I feel that my job has purpose, like it's connected to the purpose of the organization. I feel material to what's going on here. You can accomplish this in a massive organization. I'm sure there's people that feel like this in Amazon, Apple, Google, some of these major organizations. But you can also have smaller organizations where people feel very disconnected with even 50 or less employees. I don't even know what I'm doing here. I don't know what I'm supposed to do half the time. Like, I don't really know what my boss wants from me. This is something that is very fixable. But the people that fix it when it comes to culture are few. They are the owners, sometimes the board of directors, or the most senior leaders of the organization. Because what they hold people accountable to for their paycheck, their jobs, their freedom, is what is going to cascade down through the organization. So if they hold them to, hey, how are you doing, leader? Oh, I'm doing great. How are your teams doing, leader that reports to me, the CEO maybe? Okay, tell me more about that. How about the jobs? Are these still fulfilling what they want them to do? Any adjustments we should make? Show me the data. Hey, how's our culture translating to this division, this remote division? These are the type of conversations that would come from a leader of an organization where that culture is being proactively nurtured so that it consistently stays the same thing or the thing that we want it to be as we try to accomplish this purpose in the world, whatever it might be, which we hope it's a just one. So going back through, we tagged a variety of bases as it relates to retention and turnover, addressing those. What did we cover today? Number one, we started with purpose and data. What's the purpose of our organization? And then afterwards, we started getting data. We have data on our business results. Like, what are the results we're getting? Which are red? Which are green? Like, which ones do we want more of or less of? What are the strategies, the business strategies to get this done? And then how do we organize that under teams, leaders, and then within the culture, and then down to the one-to-one level, looking at the jobs that people do within that people framework of our organization. And then you rinse and repeat as you look at that data. Where are we paying attention to it as it moves forward? And what I can predict is if you are paying attention and doing these things, you'll have an organization where you're going to have a lot of self-awareness or awareness in general. That awareness, appropriately taken care of by leaders who are coached and developed in this manner, leads to self-management. That self-management leads to team management, leads to divisional management. Like, we start looking at what we can do differently. It's an emotional intelligence, self-aware group. Then we get to the outer work of leadership, engaging other people, both internally and externally, our customers, clients, patients, etc. And then on that outside circle, we get results, which we think this is what we're here to do. Yeah, but you're not going to have many people here to do it if these principles aren't in place. So hopefully today's podcast helped us kind of, where should I look? Where should I pay attention? What order should I pay attention to things? Once you get the data, well, then what do we do next? Once you get the data, once you organize around here, we'll start prescribing what should come first. Is it a problem with jobs? Is it a problem with teams? Is it a problem with culture? This will dial you into the journey that you need to get to start addressing things. Can you do it all at once? No. But I promise you, when you do this, you're going to see some bright spots. You're going to see some things working. Otherwise, people wouldn't work at your organization. In the current climate and economy right now, people have a lot of options. The people that came to work for you today chose to get up and work for you today. So there's something there. Could we be missing something? You know what? Probably. Because most of the biggest crimes that we commit or sins happen in our blind spots of the organization. I didn't even know that. Your intentions are positive, but I just didn't even see that there. That's why we prescribe getting data, listening to people, hearing people to figure out what are the moving forces that we manage and that influence these results. So hopefully today was productive for anybody who listened. Again, if you want to learn more about this, check about my previous podcast on leadership talks, which the links are all around me right now. Or feel free to reach out to me through my organization. That's at advisausa.com, ADVISA, USA.com. Thanks.